Don Rickles was not merely a comedian. He was a stage killer whose elegant craft of the roast caused Hollywood to shudder and chuckle. With no more than a keen wit and brazen manner, he elevated insult comedy from an uncouth trick to a high-wire routine of genius. He could take apart a film star, politician, or even a mob-tied singer with one utterance. And yet, audiences loved him. They laughed so hard. Tears streamed down their faces, and even the subjects of his skewering typically wound up laughing along. He gained the nickname Mr. Warmth, ironically enough, since in his performances on stage, he was anything but warm. He was bitter, sharp, merciless, and people love him for it. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Star Vault TV, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Behind all the guffaws, there was a bitter reality concealed. Rickles' career was founded on the toggling of insult and affection, but some names were fully unaffectionate. His private blacklist existed throughout his life, people he outright despised, those who represented all that was phony, lazy, or empty of Hollywood and politics. These were not joke setups. These were wounds, grudges, and naked truths Rickles covered up with the stage lights. For years, he remained quiet, employing his shield of humor. But in his later years, as he approached the end of a life that spanned 90 years, Rickles finally lifted the veil. He disclosed that the cutting insults weren't always insults. Many of them were knives directed specifically at the people he hated. His blacklist was provocative. A clueless actor who accidentally fell into politics, an overhyped film star admired for style more than content, a friend whose success was linked to the mafia, and even other comedians who Rickles perceived as phonies who wore tailor-made false laughter. The questions persisted. Why did Rickles, a man who never was known to fear anyone, remain quiet about his deep-seated hatred for all those years? Why, in a life lived fully through comedy, did he wait until his final years to unmask the bitterness behind the facade? To find out, we must return to where it all started. Don Rickles became famous during the 1950s and 1960s when Las Vegas was on the brink of becoming America's entertainment city. The casinos shone bright, the Strip was controlled by the mob, and the Rat Pack defined glamour and decadence. Rickles honed his style there. He was not a jokester in the classical sense. He did not use humorous anecdotes or witty one-liners on mundane topics. Instead, he gazed out at the crowd, selected somebody big or somebody famous, and went for the jugular. With his in-your-face insult comedy, Rickles soon became one of the nation's best-known comedians. No one was safe on stage. Race, looks, personality traits, profession, Rickles cut them all down with cutting, pungent words. His victims laughed, sometimes anxiously, because Rickles' viciousness was somehow elegant. He wasn't mean-spirited for the sake of being mean-spirited. He was larger than life, absurd, and theatrical. Cruelty was a performance, a mask that somehow included everyone in the room as part of the joke. His frequent visits to The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson made him a household name. Carson loved him because Rickles brought danger to late-night TV. He may heckle the host, ridicule the band leader, or tear apart whichever star was beside him. Anything could happen. The audiences adored the anarchy. Carson's affectionate nickname for him, Mr. Warmth, only served to make the contrast greater. Don Rickles was not warm on stage. He was a scalpel slicing through Hollywood's illusions carefully manufactured. And yet, for decades, hardly anyone knew that not everything of his stage material was strictly comedy. Some of those nasty lines had real venom. One of Rickles' favorite targets was Clint Eastwood. While most of Rickles' stage victims were politicians, comedians, or Vegas celebrities, Eastwood was an exception. Rickles viewed him as the height of Hollywood's power to make a man with little substance into an icon. To Rickles, Eastwood wasn't a great actor, but a fellow who scowled his way to fame. Before the Vegas crowd, Rickles once shot, "Clint, you have two faces. One's a scowl, the other's a deeper scowl. And that's how you're made into a Hollywood legend." The crowd roared, but Eastwood, always gravitas, gave only a snarl. To Rickles, that detachment only illustrated the point. Eastwood wasn't pretending, he was simply standing there, allowing the world to overlay myth upon his face. Year after year, Rickles reused his scorn. If he were born with Sinatra's smile, he'd be hawking tickets at a carnival rather than sitting in a director's chair. Another insult. Hollywood made a tall, quiet boy a Western hero. In fact, Clint's only good at one thing, staring until his opponent flees boredom. To crowds, they were side-splitting. To Rickles, they were confessions. Eastwood represented the travesty of Hollywood, where immensely great actors were lost while a guy with two faces became a legend. And each time Eastwood sat silently during Rickles's roasts, the silence provided Rickles with more fodder. Then there was Dean Martin, the Rat Pack's handsome crooner darling. On stage, Martin was suave charm personified, the quintessential gentleman with a glass of whiskey in his hand. Women fawned over him, men envied him, and Vegas crowned him as one of its shining stars. But Rickles was not fooled. To Rickles, Martin was a phony, a man who rode good looks, charisma, and liquor rather than sweating hard over his work. He frequently referred to Martin as Vegas's high-class drunk, ridiculing his stage image. "Dean, you don't sing, you just yawn with a melody," Rickles once taunted. Another time he cracked, "You made it by drinking more than you sang. If Vegas ever runs out of whiskey, your career is over." The Rat Pack loved Martin, but Rickles seethed at how effortlessly Martin was adored. Rickles had spent years working his way up from comedy clubs, honing his act to razor-sharp precision. Martin, by his own perception, simply smiled, raised a glass, and let the crowd project talent where none existed. Under the jokes, Rickles's resentment was genuine. Dean Martin symbolized what Rickles disliked most: shallowness canonized as greatness. Arguably Rickles's most contentious blacklist entry was Ronald Reagan. Reagan, a mediocre Hollywood actor prior to politics, most often played second-string roles. Rickles regarded him as the quintessential case of merit being rewarded. "Ronnie, you were so awful in the pictures that Hollywood pushed you into politics," Rickles once joked. When Reagan was elected governor and eventually president, Rickles did not ease up. On national TV, he ridiculed, "Mr. President, I still recall you from those terrible movies. It's a miracle America elected a character actor to head the world." He needled again, "Even Lassie had more forgettable roles than you." Reagan habitually laughed, but behind the scenes, he conceded Rickles went too far. The reality was that Rickles disliked Reagan as a representative of how Hollywood and America could make bland and talentless people icons. To Rickles, Reagan was evidence that life was not fair. A failed actor became the most powerful man on the planet. Appearances aside, Don Rickles and Frank Sinatra were best friends. Sinatra brought Rickles to the proper spheres of Vegas, guaranteeing him a career outside of dingy comedy clubs. Sinatra brought Rickles to upper-tier restaurants, treated him like family, and stood up for him even when the jokes struck too close. But Rickles never let Sinatra off easy. "Frank, without the mafia, you'd just be a second-rate lounge singer," he once declared on stage, leaving the room silent in shock. Everyone knew Sinatra's ties to the mob, and no one dared mention them, except Rickles. Sinatra, to everyone's surprise, laughed and clapped, making Rickles the only man alive who could mock him so directly and walk away unscathed. But beneath the wit, Rickles was torn. He envied Sinatra's raw talent, but loathed the fact that his empire rested as much on mob ties as on his sound. To Rickles, Sinatra represented success sullied by power and corruption. If any comedian Rickles publicly reviled, it was Bob Hope. To America, Hope was a cherished comic legend, renowned for his clean, safe humor and his USO shows. But to Rickles, Hope stood in direct opposition to real comedy. "Bob Hope is so funny I fall asleep before he even steps on stage," Rickles once quipped. He criticized Hope as being too safe, too sweet, too phony. "Bob, you never hurt anyone's feelings. But then again, you never make anyone laugh out loud either." What Rickles despised most was the way Hope commodified comedy as a bland, artificial product too cautious to offend anyone and gratify all. Bob Hope is the Disneyland of comedy, Rickles mocked. It's clean and pretty, but it has no truth. To Rickles, Hope symbolized all that was wrong with American comedy: inauthenticity, complacency, and refusal to take any risk. While Carson was the catalyst for Rickles' career, bringing him on again and again to The Tonight Show, Rickles secretly hated him. Carson was the king of late night, but Rickles regarded him as just a smooth host who existed by the teleprompter. He once told Carson live on air, "Johnny, you're so charming that your wife left you." And the audience didn't even notice. Another time, "You're not a comedian, Johnny. You're just a host who got the longest seat in television history."